Hey, how's it going, everybody? My name is SockBot, and today we are doing another round of level review type. This is a really cool level that I found, and I wanted to show you and talk about it because it has a lot of really interesting things to talk about. TM. Anyways, so today I'm going to be looking at two specific levels. Again, I will put their things on screen and I will flash them below, but I'm watching them as you watch them right in front of me, and both of them fall somewhere in the line of like action platformers, and the first one's particular is like a shooter platformer, which I think works really well with LittleBigPlanet. So this is the level that I'm working on. You can tell my beautiful new costume, which was definitely not completely random. And so this, I realized afterwards, was actually made by a professional game designer from Ubisoft Paris. And didn't know that while I was playing it, and I was super impressed, and now I'm like kind of like, oh, that's one of the reasons why I was super impressed. But it's just very interesting because it's not like they just took one gimmick and made every single obstacle with that. They used a lot of different things that maybe you would have seen before, like the little rotating climbable materials there, but then they give you an interesting gun, and it's not the paintinator that we see in most levels like that. It's a custom power-up, which, yes, there are multiple rooms for multiple guns in LittleBigPlanet. Insert a joke about gun control here. That's probably insensitive. Well, anyways, so the interesting thing about this gun in particular, and the kind of the reason that I was first like, oh, interesting, how is that going to affect gameplay, is that the range is super short. And so it's not so much about like aiming so much as it is just timing, and it's a very different type of shooter than it would be if it was like the long range paintinator, for example. There's not a whole lot of focus on aiming in particular. It's just like, oh hey, hit this thing before it hits you, which sounds kind of simple, and it definitely is, but that's one of the reasons why the other parts of this game, in particular the climbing pole, which is just like an interesting addition that I haven't seen before, and rescuing different Patreons, whatever you call them, citizens of whatever this is. It's quite interesting, and they even have a section here where you don't have a gun, and you just have to sprint away from someone, which is, again, it's like that and the ladders and a few other things that are just like, they weren't completely necessary to put in the game, but they make it interesting and a little bit more, what do you call it, complex, I guess? A little bit more unique, maybe is the right word. But yeah, I absolutely love this level. The second that I played it, I actually tried to find some that weren't featured recently, and were more like unique so that I could review them and talk to you guys about them, because I do think it's very interesting. Now, obviously, this is made by a professional game designer. I think for the most of us, we're not going to quite know how to reach this level of complexity without a lot more practice. But I do find it especially interesting that a game designer just does this in his free time and, you know, introduces things that are not hard to learn, so it's not like they're gimmicks of the level, but instead are just very simple and just add to the diversity of the level. So right there was another chase scene, and it's really cool because right at the end there, you get the gun back and you have to instantly shoot him or you'll die. It's interesting. I find it very unique and fun. And here's just another platforming section. Just, again, I can go on about this level forever, but there's a second part coming up, and I want to make sure that I get certain parts of it. So this part in particular, it's I haven't played a lot of 3D platformers in LittleBigPlanet recently. It was like huge when it first came out because people found out how to do it because they did it in the story mode in LittleBigPlanet 3. But this was something that I saw a lot right when it started and haven't seen a lot since because it can be kind of awkward. But this is probably the least awkward platforming section I found, except for this part right here, and that's just, I think it's an exception. I think I just had some issues with depth perception, which can definitely happen in a platformer like this when the camera is kind of awkward. And it's not just the creator's fault, because even the original 3D platformer part of the LittleBigPlanet 3 story mode was very similar to this. And so I finally made it, so it was good. It gave me time to talk about that section. So this is another part that's very similar to something that happened earlier when there was just a rush of enemies suddenly, and you had to obviously fight them off. But one, it's a lot harder, and two, to keep it unique, it has kind of a little bit of a different aesthetic, and more importantly has this depth of field to it where everything's coming from the back and coming forward. And again, it's a very simple change, but it does add a decent bit of intrigue that makes it interesting enough to play through, so it's not just a repeat of the earlier part in a level, which is something you can do if you want an obstacle that's similar to an earlier one but slightly harder. It's good to change up the aesthetic a little bit for one, and also try to change like the feel. So if you had a certain obstacle in like a tiny room that was pretty condensed and kind of claustrophobic, bring it into a bigger room for the second part that's slightly harder, so people get more notice on the different obstacles and things like that. Anyways, that was the end of the level, and obviously you can see that you get more items by rescuing more of the patrons, so there was a reason for it. I think the only thing I would have said is you probably could have added like a note to say like, this is why you're rescuing them, but it doesn't really matter because it was a fantastic level anyways. Not a super difficult level, but definitely a really fun one. I think it hit the line between difficult and fun pretty well. At least for me. So going on to the second one here, I have them kind of linked right one after the other one. Again, I'll put the name of the creator and the name of the level on screen. But this one is quite interesting, mostly because of the aesthetic. A lot of the times you see very like fantastical levels in LittleBigPlanet, and for once, this is a more gritty and gross one. It's definitely not an aesthetic that we haven't seen before. I've seen other sewery levels, and they've been somewhat similar to this, but there are, well, especially there's one part in this that I would say makes this incredibly unique. Does anybody actually use those level stoppers anymore? The one that stopped people from joining? I mean, it's probably like a good idea, but I don't know. I feel like I've never used one of those before. Okay, so there's something here I want to talk about briefly, and this is not anything revolutionary that I'm going to say, but it's a very good balance of creating something that looks very normal, like it would exist in the world of this level or of that game, but in addition to that, that little stripe pattern that you have to grab onto is noticeable enough to where you kind of realize you have to go towards it, and that's probably what you need to grab, because it sticks out. But as opposed to it just being like bright red or something, it does still fit into the level. And that's one of the first things that I learned when creating levels, was that you had to be very careful to make sure that when I would test play it with friends, they would know where to go, and know where to go without just putting giant arrows places. And obviously sometimes you have to do that anyways. There's just certain sections where you have to put a sign or something that will tell them what to do, and trying to integrate it into the level so it makes sense, just like that tiny little detail of the caution tape part that you have to grab. It is difficult, but it's very important to learn, especially if you're going to be posting the levels online and not really there to, give hints to just players that are playing it with you. I will also say that I was about to pause there, which is why I shut up, but I was also going to mention that this is one of the few levels I've seen recently that actually still uses the water mechanic, and I think a lot of more should. I'm one of those people that didn't mind the water levels in Super Mario or Legend of Zelda. I know everybody still hates them, but, well, yeah, I think it could be used more. Maybe I'm just unique on that, but who knows. Okay, so right there, just want to mention something. That little crack in the pipe, I've been playing quite a few levels recently online because I've been trying to find really good ones just to talk about that have unique things about them that I haven't talked about in my own levels. But that little crack in the pipe is one of them, because I played a lot of levels where you're hidden behind terrain and expected to continue moving recently, and it's important to show the character that they can, one, move behind that terrain, like make it really obvious, like the entrance to the pipe there, and in addition to that, like make sure that they're not getting confused. And I did play a level recently where that was not at all telegraphed, that you could go behind it, and then more importantly, once you got behind it, that you could like continue moving through it. And that's not really something that you want to do with a level, because if that's what, like, if you're moving a lot behind a lot of terrain and the character you're playing as is hidden, it's kind of like on a stage play. You always want to be facing the audience. You always want to be visible to the audience, and that's definitely the case with your playable character in any type of game. And it can definitely create an interesting thing, like going through that pipe is pretty unique, and it's like kind of like, oh, okay, it's extra claustrophobic because I can't even see myself, but I do think it's important to not kind of go overboard with that. I only mentioned that because I saw it in a couple levels recently that I was playing with friends, and they got very confused, and I was like, okay, this is something that normally levels do quite well. Like this one does it really well, but that level that we were playing online did not do it so well. Okay, so this is, I think I remembered, I did find this also in the like platforming shooter section. I think this was it, and initially when I was playing this, I was like, oh, this is kind of strange. Like the level's been very unique up until now, and then this part was kind of like, oh, what's going on? But you just give it a second. So this is the part I was talking about. The reason that they put that there at the beginning, at least this is why I would have put it there, I guess I can't fully speak for the creator that made this, but was to kind of remind you that this is kind of why the gun's here in this level, is to break these little holes into the pipes. And so although that's not a super unique concept, the gun, the Pantinator in particular, can be used in many different ways, and it's just like, okay, this is how you're going to use it in this level, so keep an eye out for this type of thing. And because it's super easy and obvious to begin with, it makes the more complex section, like this one where there's just two of them. I mean, it's not super complex, but considering you need to do them in order to hit the other one, it's slightly more complex. And despite me having no idea how to get up to that platform, it definitely did warrant that initial, like, very easy, shoot this to break this, and then you can continue moving. Yeah. Also, for this section in particular, there's like, this is probably one of the most unique platforming sections I've seen, because you have to keep track of not only yourself and the platforms that are shifting at kind of awkward intervals, but also the deadly gas that's shifting at awkward intervals, and so it's not immediately clear as to what you have to do, and I think that's why I died a few times. Maybe it's clear to you, I don't know, but it was very unique. And of course, we come to not the reason why I chose this level, but definitely a huge reason. This is one of the coolest boss fights I've ever seen in a level, and I'm including all of the boss fights within the story modes. I think this may be cooler than at least 90% of the boss fights within the actual Media Molecule or Sumo Digital story mode. Now, I do believe this one was actually made in LittleBigPlanet 2, and that could also explain why there's not a whole lot of depth, but, like, who cares? You can still make three-layer games in LittleBigPlanet 3. But I think this one was made in LittleBigPlanet 2, which does make it even cooler that it runs this well with so much going on. But a couple things about this boss fight. One, there are multiple stages to it, and yet it doesn't all take place in the same room, which is very cool. It also is pretty obvious what to do in terms of, like, okay, keep running from him, that makes sense, and then when you get stuck in one area and it zooms out and you're like, okay, there's no way I'm getting out of here without doing something, because both sides are deadly, alright, the giant red flashing button, that's what I'm supposed to grab. But it works with the aesthetic of it, and I do think that the creature looks super cool. I think the intervals of the gun that it's using, or I guess it's spitting acid or something, are interesting, especially because they do change between the first one and the second one. In the second one, it shoots individual smaller ones, which can kind of like, there's more of them, so there's more to dodge. And in the first stage, it was just kind of little bigger blocks, I think. And anyways, very interesting that you would change it up, not just between the different phases, but between the same phase. So it goes like phase 1, phase 2, phase 1, phase 2, but phase 1 initially is one way, and phase 1, the second time you see it, is slightly different. That keeps it interesting. Also, I think one of the coolest parts of this boss fight is not only does it not take place in one spot, but it continues over, and the aesthetic is maintained throughout the entire boss fight, but the background changes enough to make you feel like you're going to different areas running away from this boss, and then it also goes vertically, which is just like, oh, okay, yeah, let's switch it up a little bit. And the further you get, the more like obstacles there are. Like, for one, the whole time you have to make sure you keep hitting the bubble so you don't drown, and then towards the end there was that, like, the little grates that were shooting out deadly gas. And also, more of just a compliment to the creator, the programming on this, for this thing to not get stuck during the couple times I played this level, is truly amazing. Like, I played this with friends and it still didn't get stuck. It was very impressive. But yeah, this is turning more into a series less about reviews and more about me just being like, oh my god, this level's so cool, which is fine with me. I don't mind being that type of creator, but that's more by like how I want this to be. So I try not to be super critical about things, because it's saying like this is a common mistake is a fine thing to say, but in reviews like this, I don't want to say like, okay, I found this level and it was really bad, because that's not helpful to you guys and that's not very interesting to watch. I think more likely most of the videos will be like this one, where it's like, oh, I found this level and there were all these really cool things in it that I think worked well because of this, or this is much harder to do than you would think it is, and that's why it's so impressive that they pull it off, like with that final boss being able to follow you and aim towards you and not get stuck, which, if you've graded anything in LittleBigPlanet, even if you do everything perfectly, it can still get stuck. You have to, like, specifically plan things out to kind of solve themselves in case things get stuck. And that's small things like that I find very impressive, and kind of want to say, hey, keep an eye out for this when you're playing other people's levels, because it's impressive and you should be impressed. And also, this works well, so you can use it in your levels and stuff like that. Anyways, I'm ranting, but that's kind of what these videos are about, because I have a lot of scripted ones about specific things that you should do, and that mistakes that I've made that maybe you can take advice from and not make yourself. But this one in particular is like, oh, look at all this awesome stuff, it's so cool. And you know, just to say, hey, there's still new levels, because there's still a lot of people that are getting a little bit discouraged from playing LittleBigPlanet, and I'm sure people that will be discouraged from Dreams after a few months because they think nobody's playing anymore. But case in point, there are still many, many new levels to find and continue playing. And yes, I continue playing this with friends, because that's what I do, and I'm sure that you can continue doing the same with friends and stuff like that. Also, correction to my last video, because I'm sure a lot of people have seen the comment or completely ignored the comment and then commented again, which is fine. I have totally done that myself. But yes, LittleBigPlanet 1 servers are up. Yes, LittleBigPlanet 2 servers are up. Somebody on Instagram let me know that they said that all the LittleBigPlanets share the same servers. I don't know if that's true, but I mean, I'm assuming it is, because LittleBigPlanet 1 levels that are posted now should still show up in LittleBigPlanet 3. I'm assuming they do. They don't just import them all at intervals. But yeah, LittleBigPlanet 1 servers are still up. I've been very excited about that and very busy just playing around on all my old stuff. So hope you all are doing well. I'm going to end the video here, because this is so far past when the actual levels ended. I hope you did enjoy this. If you do enjoy this format, let me know. If there are any improvements I can make to it, definitely also let me know in a comment down below. And if you like the video in general, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more. So yeah, that's how this works, and no pressure as always, because I'm just happy that you guys watched this one. So I will talk to you all very soon, and yeah. Oh, also, yeah, hey, this is my Resident Evil shirt from Comic-Con, and I wore it because it was from the I don't know why I'm grabbing my chest. It's very, well, I don't know what it is, but anyways, this was from the Resident Evil 2 remake demo, which was fantastic. I'll probably make a video on that, because I know that's not the focus of my channel, but I love Resident Evil. I mean, you guys know I have a tattoo about it, so, alright. So many extra things I didn't need to put in this video, but anyways, I love you guys, and I'll talk to you soon, and goodbye. God, I need to stop reaching so high, because I end up stretching and yawning. Bye, guys.